Good afternoon, and welcome to this special video presentation of Cowboy State Politics. I'm David Iverson. The video you're about to see is a companion to the podcast episode that was published on Podbean or any other place that you get your podcasts. Before I begin, I need to warn you that some people might consider the content of these videos to be graphic, and certainly a lot of the language is graphic, and it's certainly not acceptable for children. Approximately 2 weeks ago, Cowboy State Politics sent two undercover journalists, one to the University of Wyoming and one to an event in Rock Springs. This video is going to deal mainly with the event that was held at the University of Wyoming. The Multicultural Affairs Department sponsored an event that was called Ballroom. But this is not your parents' version of ballroom dancing. It's something entirely different. Essentially, it's a drag show. After the drag show, they held a training so that all the members of the audience could learn how to participate in a drag show, and then afterwards, a discussion was held. To give you some context of what their performance looked like, take a look at this video. And in a minute, she's going to take off her skirt. Now, if this were sponsored by, say, the theater department, maybe we could understand. But it wasn't. It was sponsored by the Multicultural Affairs Department, and it was held in the Education Building Auditorium on the University of Wyoming campus. So you might say that this event was entirely sanctioned by the University of Wyoming. Here's another video just to give you another look as to what was going on. All of the ones that you're going to see are inherently sexual in nature, and this is clearly an example of that. So that gives you an idea as to what was happening in the Education Auditorium at the University of Wyoming on April the 13th. In fact, all of the videos that you're going to see in this video presentation were taken on April the 13th in Laramie at the University of Wyoming. As you can clearly hear in the video, the crowd is cheering. Now, it's also important to point out that there was a university administrator who was also attending the event. In fact, the university administrator was participating in the event. His name is Tyler Wolfgang, and as you can clearly see from the University of Wyoming website, that he's the director of gender and sexuality at the University of Wyoming. So admittedly, a low-level administrator, but an administrator nonetheless. In this next piece of video, you'll see him participating in not necessarily in the drag show, but in the lessons that happened afterwards. Here's that video. The administrator in question is the gentleman in long hair and a white shirt and brown pants, and here you can see him dancing with the presenters of this drag show presentation. Now again, the next segment I'm going to play for you does contain some rough language. So if there's any young people running around, please let them out of the room.
Yeah, we said pussy a lot. Pussy a lot. Especially when it comes to Bowie. That's why you wouldn't say that. Like, I was like,
Now, as you can see, the university administrator does nothing to stop the event. He doesn't intervene in the rough language. In fact, you can hear the entire group laughing. In this next piece of video, it's roughly the same thing, but what you're going to hear is the presenter or the trainer or whatever you want to call this individual explaining to the crowd some of the attributes they have to have.
women, if you have titties, that is another step. You know, like, oh, Women, pussy. No. Use that. No. You want to like, remember, the boys will be girls. So like, the boys. If you don't got no titties, no hair, no pussy, you better be taking me to that day. Better be that what makes the performance exciting. That's what makes it up. Like this, it gives you a whole.
So if that weren't bad enough, there's more where that came from. That is what your tax dollars are paying for. And that's clearly what the University of Wyoming thinks is appropriate education. It's paid for with your tax dollars. Now, it's also important to point out that many of the administrators from the University of Wyoming have told the legislature repeatedly that this sort of thing does not happen at the University of Wyoming, that they're taking all of their concerns out of context. After I play this next piece of video for you, we're going to explain how, in fact, the truth is exactly the opposite.
Water-wise, I would say my kids. I love meeting new kids and like their energy and like my
Now, it was difficult to hear, but you have to listen close. Now, what is said in that video is that the presenter loves meeting new kids and their new energy. And then someone in the crowd says, F the kids. Let me play it for you one more time. Listen close.
Water-wise, I would say my kids. I love meeting new kids and like their energy and like my
You'll notice that in each one of these videos, after the really bad parts are said, you hear the crowd laughing. Now, there's one other thing that I want to point out to you that happens in this video clip. Again, you see that university administrator, Tyler Wolfgang, sitting front and center in the video. Notice what he doesn't do when he hears exactly what was said. And it's clear from the video that he heard it loud and clear.
Water-wise, I would say my kids. I love meeting new kids and like their energy and like my
Right there. In the video, you can see him look in the direction of whomever said that, and you can also see him smile. That tells me, and it should tell all of you, that not only does this University of Wyoming Director of Gender and Sexuality agree with what is going on, he condones it. As if the video clips that I just played for you weren't enough, there's clear evidence that the University of Wyoming has partnered with a statewide lobbying group called Wyoming Equality. The truth is, Wyoming Equality is the loudest and probably one of the most influential lobbying groups in the entire state. Take a look at this. This is an advertisement for classes that Wyoming Equality was allowed to teach on the University of Wyoming campus. Now, it might be difficult to see in the picture, but it clearly says that these classes are being held in the Wyoming Union building. And you can see all of the topics that are covered in all of these classes. On the advertisement, you see the University of Wyoming logo. So obviously, the university is condoning this, they're help sponsoring it, and they're partnering with a lobbying group and allowing them to teach classes on your University of Wyoming campus. What's more is that University of Wyoming administrator, Tyler Wolfgang, also has a little bit closer ties to Wyoming Equality than you might think. Here's a picture of him wearing a Wyoming Equality t-shirt. Now, this was published in the Casper Star Tribune last year. There it is. On the sleeve, you can see the Wyoming Equality logo. So it's clear that the University of Wyoming has allowed Wyoming Equality, the lobbying group, to have far more influence on the University of Wyoming campus than is probably appropriate. Probably doesn't figure into it. It isn't appropriate. And it's resulted in drag shows being sponsored by the university and result in all of the very profane videos that you just heard. There's one more piece of this before I show you the documents that Cowboy State Politics has obtained. This is a picture of Wyoming Equality President Sarah Burlingame with University of Wyoming President Ed Seidel. You'll notice that they all seem to be participating in the same event. And if you look at the caption from the Facebook post from Wyoming Equality, it says, "Thanks to President Seidel, VP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Zebediah Hall, and University of Wyoming Multicultural Affairs for a great night sharing stories and strength. It's good to be together." Clearly, the relationship between the University of Wyoming and Wyoming Equality is far too cozy. And keep in mind, through all of this, that you are paying for it through your tax dollars. All the while, the university is telling legislators, and the public for that matter, that none of this is really happening at the university, and there's nothing to see here. I have in my hand documents that were obtained from the University of Wyoming. This top one is entitled The University of Wyoming Inclusivity Pillar. Now you'll notice it does say draft of April 16th, 2021, but what it was is a draft version of what was going to be included in the University of Wyoming strategic plan. So these are items that the university, the Board of Trustees, and the Office of the President of the University, Ed Seidel, were working on. Let me just read you a couple of portions from this. Quote, "The goal at UW is to embrace our history while engaging in a cultural shift, embraced by the Board of Trustees, President, Deans, Vice Presidents, and Associate President. One of the goals of this document is to, quote, decrease the persistence of inequality in access to education based on gender identity, expression, race, and ethnicity. This in and of itself is not all that controversial. We do want a university that is inclusive to everybody. We want everybody to have the opportunity to get an equal education. But the problem comes in when the university itself is pushing an agenda, which is clearly what they're doing in this case. Listen to this next piece. Quote, achieving the goals noted here require us to permanently change many of the ways we think about how we have conducted research, scholarship, education, community engagement, professional development, and the ways we generally conduct business. We cannot make lasting systemic and structural change without actually changing systems and structures. The key words in this document are permanent change. You see, it is the goal of the university to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion, and make that a significant part of education at the University of Wyoming. So to quickly review, the University of Wyoming, from the President's Office to the Board of Trustees, is engaging in a cultural shift at the university. They want to permanently change the way that the university operates, and they're doing that through diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're using the Office of Multicultural Affairs to sponsor events that bear little to no resemblance to education. The results of those events you heard for yourself. They're profane, they're not appropriate, and I'm pretty sure that nobody wants their children to participate in them, let alone want you to pay for them. The point in this video is to show you what is happening at the university and to show you what your tax dollars are paying for. Now again, please go back and listen to the full podcast episode where I explain all of this in detail. Again, thank you for watching, and please take care.